rock and roll. Whoops, this one. All right, so hang on, let me go there. How's everybody doing this morning?
Excellent.
Doing well.
All right. Let's go here. All right, you guys seeing the computer all right?
Sure can.
Yep.
Lovely. All right, so let's go. Real quick recap from yesterday. We talked a lot about just industry information, and you guys feel like you're a little more educated on just video in general. Some players, some of the good. So we're going to go through competitive landscape. And hold on, let me skip ahead a little bit. But
can you zoom in on your team so you're not all just little people way in the back of the room?
I think I can do that.
I don't know what camera's up there that's in that space. I didn't look at that yesterday.
Yeah, we've got a, let's see. I think all I can do is switch between front camera and rear. Oh, let's try that.
Okay.
Good. Is that a different camera? You get in the back of our heads now?
Yeah, now we're getting a blue screen of death.
Okay, let's go back there then.
Windows.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, is that better?
It is, but oh, there we go. Yep, perfect. That's fine.
It's closer now, or better view?
No, it's not closer at all. But you're not blue screen of death, and you're not green. So this works.
This is an upgrade from what we just saw.
Since you can see us, we're going to leave it like it is.
That's fine.
All right, beautiful. Okay, so because of the information that you guys went through yesterday and going through just industry information and learning about some of the competition, as I go through today's presentation, I want to make sure that it's highly interactive. I want you guys to really be engaged with the information that we're presenting. All right. This is all intended to help you or provide you with a competitive advantage, right? We want you to understand about competition. We want you to understand how the Dexio plays, how we beat the competition. So this is really meant to be a deeper dive, but all of this is intended to provide you with just powerful ammunition. Okay. Let's do it. All right, so for starters, we're going to focus on what I think are our two main competitors, meaning that they do video as a service just like we do. So we're going to look first at Zoom, and in a second, we'll talk about how we win. First, we're going to take a look at some Zoom messaging.
Is there audio with this video clip? Can you hear me, Colin?
Yeah, we can hear you. Sorry.
Oh, was there audio with that?
Did you see the video?
I did, but I didn't hear anything.
Okay.
Was there audio to that clip?
Yeah, we'll have to play with that and see if that was...
You know what? Doesn't matter. Colin and I are good on it. As long as you had it at your end, that works.
Okay. And we'll play around a little bit more with that and see how...
no worries.
A YouTube clip embedded in Prezi can be presented in Videxio. Did you catch all that? Because that's exactly what we just experienced. So that was actually pretty cool. Not to mention in a... what was this, 120-inch Prism monitor. That was pretty cool.
Yeah, it was.
You know what, Patty, I don't think you see too many people try to stress the limits like we just did at 9, 10,
Yeah,
8.
I know. Fair enough.
All right, so let's talk about Zoom a little bit. So I remember you did Blue Jeans. Did either one of you go through any of the information on Zoom yesterday?
No, I just...
Okay. So I think a lot of the themes, common denominators, whatever you want to call it, I think you'll see this a lot just as far as the strengths of Videxio. Personally, I think when you go through some of these bullets up here, when we talk about global coverage, we're talking about the, is it 19 pops?
19 in 10 days. Yeah, it's 18 right now. Toronto lights up September.
That is, so Patty, anybody else? I mean, well, I shouldn't say anybody else. When we're looking at Zoom, do we have an idea? They're just using the general internet, right?
Right. They have 0 pops. 0.
That is an incredible competitive advantage when we talk about not only is it our own network, proprietary network, but because it's our own network, we have the ability to control quality of service.
Pops, points of
presence.
Good question.
Those acronyms.
Absolutely. Great question.
So here's part of that. So an example of a call, right? You are calling. We're all dialed in right now to Ken's virtual meeting room, his VMR. So we're going from Ken, right, out to our POP. I'm going out my Xfinity Comcast network in my home office to the POP. Colin is doing the same from Nashville to the closest POP where he is. We all meet in that POP, and we are now locked down in a secured, private network. And wherever that call goes, and then back to us. Now, Zoom is general internet. There is no POP. So they're going from here to Nashville, Nashville back to Atlanta, Atlanta back to me, and they're hopping over multiple ISPs, internet service providers. So they're going from AT&T to maybe an old Bell South, maybe to a Verizon, maybe hitting a little bit of BT, but they can be hitting as many as, in this little tiny southeast region, 30 different ISPs to get from call A to call B. We hit one.
Well, it's what you would expect with general internet quality. And I guess what I mean by that is, remember yesterday when we had Lauren on webcam versus her endpoint? Yeah. So webcam is, even though she was connected to the network, when you look at the difference in quality, I think that's, you saw a very distinct difference in quality. We have had people that have been active Zoom users, and they think that all these services are the same, right? And so when we all we have to do is get them on. When they join a Videxio session, a visual huddle session, the first thing they say is, "Wow, this quality is much better than I'm used to." Patty, would you agree?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And here's your analogy, right? Usually all my analogies are about food, but this particular one is cars. So the analogy is you're on 400 on the 8 or 9 lane highway right before you get off Grady Curve, right? You're going down that way and it is freaking chock-a-block rush hour. The HOV lane is Videxio only users. If you're Videxio, you get the HOV lane. If you're Zoom or Blue Jeans, you get all the other 9 lanes to play with all the other traffic out there. The email, the video, the streaming, people are downloading the Olympics. Everything is going through the other 9 lanes. Videxio gets HOV, and only Videxio get the HOV lane.
Yeah, that's a great analogy. I love that. So I also want to tie that to endpoint registration. And when I say tie that to, I mean skip to endpoint. We'll come back to the other two. But when we talk about endpoint registration, that's something that is fairly unique when you look at the other, again, Zoom and Blue Jeans and whatnot. So the fact that we can work with a company that already has equipment, in-room equipment, standards-based video conferencing equipment, the fact that we can work with them and, like we saw yesterday, do the endpoint registration. So that is a different type of license. That means that we can take their endpoint, their standard video conferencing unit, and prepare it so that it can be used on the Videxio network. You want to talk about that just a little bit, Patty, especially after the discussion we had yesterday, because I think I might have given them a little bit of wrong information.
Sure. So when you provision an endpoint, provisioning that endpoint is giving it a license, right? Just like you all have right now your own My Meeting video client. It's giving that piece of hardware that the customer probably already owns and invested money in, giving that piece of hardware its own client. So it takes that endpoint. I'm on an endpoint right here, right? I've got 3 endpoints in my office here and a couple laptops. This endpoint is provisioned. So now it has call control. It has call management. It has QoS, quality of service. It has encryption. Nobody can hack into my call. Nobody can hack into the IP, and I'll get back to that in a second. And it has firewall traversal, which is key. The QoS piece means I have dedicated pipe that is just for video, and it's not sharing everything everywhere on a network. The encryption piece, are we familiar with encryption already? Because I can skip anything that I'm getting.
Or do you guys understand what encryption is?
Just
So-
a secure.
It is, but I'll briefly explain as it was explained to me. So when you take a transmission, the way that you secure it is you have a packet on the front end that is saying that, hey, the rest of this information is being transmitted in a secure fashion, meaning that it gives you the code necessary to be able to read or view or understand the code that's following that packet. Then there's a packet at the end that says, okay, this is the end of the secure transmission. So that secure socket layer is what is, it is an industry standard, but it is what prevents people from being able to hack in to be able to get the information that's being sent over the internet, because it's coded in such a manner where you have to have the front packet and the back packet in order to be able to understand and decipher. Right.
And there are different levels of encryption, right? Chocolate, vanilla, strawberry, and then the banana split. We do the banana split, which is AES 128 encryption. There are some that just have a little bit, and they'll say, oh, yeah, our call's encrypted. No, there are different levels. AES 128 is what the government uses, right? That's what DOD and DOJ use, Department of Justice and Department of Defense. So that's what those entities use, which is what we use as well. As, by the way, what Tandberg and Cisco used as well. So, key.
But it's a very important point, and typically where it comes up.
Nobody does it.
Right. Right.
Nobody does endpoint registration.
Right. That's the huge competitive advantage. Now, that's going to be a big point for companies that have room equipment, because it means that they can leverage an investment they've already made and be able to use Visual Huddle and now have that in-room equipment. And typically they have more than one. They've got multiple locations if they've invested in the hardware. And now we can take their multiple locations, and instead of that person saying, well, you know what, we found it easier just to pick up the phone to call Houston, to call Chicago, to call LA, and we just do calls or whatever. Now we can say, well, Mr. Customer, you can take this equipment now, and with our service, you can have a meeting with anybody, anywhere. You don't need to have IT come in and do anything to your infrastructure. We can provision that endpoint or those endpoints so that you can use that meeting to meet with anybody with any device anywhere in the world. So you've taken what they bought to be an internal communication tool, point to point or multi-point with multiple internal locations, and chances are it's collecting dust. And now you're saying we can absolutely resurrect it, give it new life, and give you the ability to now use it as a simple endpoint connecting to a call or to a video call.
So they didn't have to repurchase anything, right? They're now taking a piece of hardware, and if they don't have encryption on there, even though in this call, for instance, I'm on an endpoint, you're on an endpoint, Colin's on his My Meeting video client today, but normally he's on an endpoint. On an endpoint, just because this piece of hardware is connected to the wall, it's live, even though I'm not engaged in a call. If there's not a secured environment on that endpoint, I can hack it. Now, I personally can't hack it, but people smarter than me can hack it. Now, just because they're hacking it, they're not necessarily recording and grabbing the content from this call and this information, but they're using that pipe to do 2 things. 1, infiltrate other places inside my organization through the IP address, and they're using this as now their highway, their Videxio HOV, well, that's a bad example because that's provisioned. They're using the other 8 lanes of that highway, if it's not a provisioned endpoint, to use the endpoint IP address to send their traffic for free elsewhere. So encryption is key.
It is.
It's key.
So we'll go back to the other 2. So unlimited audio, this is another very big point. So Patty, are you familiar with how Zoom provides audio?
They're billable.
So if you want to do an audio conference call, with your Zoom account, you're going to pay for that. Typically, it's a per minute charge, per leg on the call.
Yep.
That's the traditional billing method for audio conference calls. One of the audio conference call industry has been a billion-dollar industry. Companies have paid. I know at PGI we had companies were paying a couple $100,000 a month for just audio conferencing. So the fact that this is provided unlimited, meaning that you pay for your account, so we don't say free, but you pay for your account, but with your account, you can have an unlimited number of conference calls with up to 30 people. That is a significant point for people who already have who are used to doing audio calls. The other significant point to this is that if you've got a user that's, if you bring this up and say, hey, Mr. Prospect, by the way, all your conference calls that you do that you're paying for now with your service provider, you can now incorporate into your visual huddle room, and people can just dial in, call in, and that can be part of the service that you're paying for. No extra charge.
Right.
If they say, well, that's fine, but I use GlobalMeet or I use
Intercall, Arcaden, Glowpoint, yeah.
If I use one of these other service providers and my participants already know that number, so I don't want to switch my conference call number. I don't pay for it. IT pays for it, so it doesn't matter what it costs. So then you can say, well, good news is we integrate. So you can actually keep your Intercall or your PGI GlobalMeet number, and we can integrate that into your account. So that's the audio that you're using when you are running a visual huddle session. The other thing that makes that the fact that we integrate very nice is it also means that you can, if you meet or talk with any reps or people that work with any of the service providers, you can be viewed as a non-threat because you can say, hey, we're not trying to go after your business. If you've got audio conference call users and that's your bread and butter and you want to protect that revenue, we're happy to partner with you or work with you, and you can just layer on our video right on top of that service.
And it's most audio providers. I think we've got 9, and forgive me that I don't remember what all of them are at the top of my head. Level 3, Glowpoint, Intercall, Arcaden, AT&T, Colin.
It's all the major players, though.
I don't remember any others.
Yeah, there's a couple others, and I say that because somebody asked me about one in specific, and they said, yeah, we want to bring this audio bridge that we have. And I had never even heard of it, much less I know it's not in ours. And they said, well, can we include that and just bring that in as one port? That one was so small and so benign, it's not in our bank of audio bridges that we have. Because in bringing in an audio bridge, just the back end of that, there's work that goes on behind the scenes to make that completely compatible with all of our 19 POPs globally to allow that bridge to come in. It's not necessarily just saying, oh yeah, dial in. There's a whole lot of work that goes on in our infrastructure behind the scenes. So
let's talk for a second about interoperability. So Pat, are you familiar with how Zoom, what devices they work with or what you can join a Zoom conference from?
And it's pretty close to ours. I mean, they don't, of course, provision an endpoint, and they don't have their own My Meeting video. There's no soft client. So when you're in a Zoom client, you're in a Zoom meeting, everybody has to go meet on a bridge, right? Everybody has to go meet on a bridge. So I have to call you, tell you when we're going to meet, how we're going to meet, what time we're going to meet, send you an invite, you accept it, I say yes, and then we go meet on that bridge. So there's no point-to-point dialing, which is a pretty big differentiator, as well as the endpoint registration. But in doing that, they do allow WebRTC, I believe, on all browsers. I think there's one hiccup. But you know what? It was in beta. So let's say it's all browsers. They can have endpoints dial in to their call. So I can dial into a Zoom bridge, a Zoom VMR, but I'm billed for it. You as the customer, you're going to pay more because I'm on an endpoint. I'm not on WebRTC or my own Skype for Business client. So because I'm on an endpoint, I have to pay a connector fee. There's a fee for that for every single endpoint. So my Zoom price just went up.
So big difference in the ability to provision an endpoint with all the benefits you get with that. And then
Correct.
That endpoint has a license. You pay for the license fee for the endpoint, but you can use it on an unlimited basis.
They also don't guarantee bandwidth. right? So in ours, chocolate, vanilla, strawberry, you can get an endpoint registration for however much speed you want guaranteed from Videxio to that endpoint. So it's either 768, a meg and a half, or 3 megs. Any one of those three, I will, as a company, guarantee that your endpoint has it. Zoom will give you an endpoint, and they'll say you should have, but there is no guarantee of the bandwidth. You can easily take a hit, and the reason you can take a hit is because you're not on their network. You're on generic ISP, hopping from ISP to ISP.
Okay.
So they don't have guaranteed
3
bandwidth.
meg is max.
3
Yeah,
meg
that's
is the
true.
max for one endpoint to dial into that call. So you can have 30 users all coming in at 3 megs.
Okay.
So the point-to-point calling, also on the list, I think is very important because that's what provides, you get the directory, so you can make a call, and that can be part of your standard communication process, just being able to click a button, call somebody just like you would on the telephone, and it can be a video call. And
So Ruben, what do
actually don't have
you
anything.
think this call is coming in at right now? If you had to look at bandwidth on this video quality.
I'm not entirely sure. I don't really have any guesses.
No, but it's a good question because you said 3 megs is only, that's as far as you go. Right now we are coming in at 768.
Oh, okay.
So this is a pretty low bandwidth, right?
Yep.
But the quality is stellar because it is locked in on our MPLS network.
I think that's a big key. The fact that, again,
It is.
you're in the HOV lane.
Yeah.
That has, I think, more to do. Well, it can have more to do with quality than anything else. It just depends on what's going on in the other 9 lanes, right?
Right.
Going back to the
That's
485,
impressive.
75.
Right. I mean, that last mile in my home office, during school's all back in session now, I will tell you at 3:30, 4 o'clock, I will see little blips. Now you may or may not see them. I'll see a little blip here and there or a little burst of pixelization because every single high school kid is home, lighting up Snapchat, Instagram, Facebook,
Snapchat's
and their
going crazy.
laptops. Right. And they're all doing their video gaming. So I will watch because I'm not on fiber. I'm on Comcast. So that last mile is mine. But I will see little hiccups when, Colin goes home and he kicks on his video games, crushes my network.
All right.
All right, so any questions about Zoom? You're definitely going to come up against these guys quite a bit. They are what I'll call a direct competitor, but I think that we have some significant points that provide, again, significant ammunition for you to be able to blow Zoom out of the water.
And forgive me, I have a hard stop at 9:30. I have another meeting. I have to give a quick presentation.
Okay.
So as soon as I can wrap that one up, I'll dial back in. Will you still be in this space at the next meeting?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll come back. Sorry, guys.
Perfect. All right, thanks, Patty.
Sure. Bye.
Is their pricing any different? Cheaper,
We
more
have that,
expensive?
yeah. We'll we'll go through that in just a second. Well, here,
Like numbers.
I'll answer the question and then I'll come back to Fuji. Hold on. So when you look at Zoom pricing, they have a 10-person minimum, $20 a month. They can go up to 50 participants.
Are you going to send this to us?
Yeah. You'll have all this. So this will give you an idea of the differences. So we also, the only difference in our pricing here for Videxio is that we also offer a $99 a month price point for 1 to 9 licenses. It's really 1 to 6 licenses because if you were going to buy buying 10 licenses is cheaper than buying 7 licenses. Because 10 licenses is $59 a month. 7 is $99 a month.
Agreement, there's no required term. It does have a breakers. Bluetooth has 4 pops, but Zoom has none.
With Zoom, you are subject to the quality of the internet at the time that you're using it.
Can we go back over what WebRTC is again?
Sure. So WebRTC is real-time communication. It's built into browsers and provides the ability to do video over your browser. With Chrome, Colin, are you still on? You might have to help me. Chrome,
Yeah.
Opera, and what's the third browser?
There's Chrome, Opera, Firefox, and then Safari and Internet Explorer as well.
But with Internet Explorer, isn't there a plugin that you have to download to be able to use WebRTC?
The
IE
plugin
and
is for
Safari
screen sharing.
are for, we need a plugin for IE and Safari regardless. And then for Chrome, you need the extension in order to share content. But like for demos and stuff, people are just joining. They don't need to share content, right? So they don't need the extension.
Okay.
When you come in on Internet Explorer, it'll require you to do the download. With Chrome, you don't have to download anything.
Yeah, exactly. And that is not, even though, so Lauren, that's the extension is a Videxio extension, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. With WebRTC in general, so not just Videxio, but we talked about some of the other platforms that have WebRTC support. That is a browser by browser capability. So when we just talked about Chrome, you don't have to download anything. That's not specific to Visual Huddle or Videxio. That is specific to WebRTC. So when you look at BlueJeans supporting WebRTC, there are browsers that support WebRTC like Chrome natively, and there are browsers like IE where you have to download something in order to participate or view or interact with WebRTC.
Gotcha.
And that's the same for BlueJeans and Zoom. They are all plugin required. That's not a differentiator.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I see.
All right, so I'll go back to BlueJeans. All right, and so we'll see if you guys hear this. If not, bear with us for a second. This is the BlueJeans commercial.
Bad acting.
All right, so that's their propaganda. Did you guys have audio with that?
No.
No,
Okay.
just a lot of slow-moving pictures.
Okay, all right, so we'll work on that. But in the room, it was PDC. Pretty darn cool. So Lauren or Colin, you could talk about how BlueJeans does that. Maybe it's we should start with how Videxio handles large events.
Sure. So, as you guys know, the standard VMR, so the VMR that you guys all have, your personal virtual meeting room holds up to 30 participants. So 30 audio, video, we don't care, the makeup. Once you have more than 30, so we have these things called special events. So if you have a town hall meeting or just you need more than 30 participants. So we could do it for 40 participants, 80 participants, or 120 participants. And that's just an hourly charge. And we will have our technical team on with the end user to kind of do some white glove training or white glove, there's a lot of people. It's going to be an interesting situation when you have 120 people dialing in that have probably never used video before. We don't think that's the best way to do video, right? Once you get over 30 people in a room, it's not everyone's communicating probably, right?
Yeah, I just wanted the capability.
Well, no. So keep in mind, because we're talking about connections, not people, right? So here, we have 3 people in a room, it's one connection. So when
Right.
you're talking about 30 connections, yeah, you're talking about, it can get pretty hairy.
Okay.
30 is a lot.
Yeah.
30 connections.
30 is a lot. And so just so you guys know how we came up with 30 is same in audio conferencing as video conferencing. 85% of the time, you'll never have more than 25 participants on any sort of call. Web conferencing, audio conferencing, video conferencing. So that's kind of why Blue Jeans and us, Blue Jeans is 25 ports, we're 30 ports, but there's not that many times when you're probably going to need those extra 5 ports.
And then,
but we can go above.
Yeah, and then what's the, isn't there a streaming integration or a way that if you wanted to do,
Exactly.
open it up to 1,000 people?
Yep. So we recommend live streaming once you get above, probably 50 participants, just because not everyone's going to be interacting and it's going to be a bad experience. So what we do then is we'll have all of the smart people, right, in a virtual meeting room, maybe 5, 6 participants. They're sharing content. They're doing their own little spiels. And all of that is being pushed out in a live stream, whether it be through YouTube or Facebook Live or pretty much any, we can integrate with any of the major players. And so on a Facebook Live or YouTube Live, you're using TI's page. So it already has TI's, security preferences and everything that TI wants in that. We're just integrating within that. And then you also have the ability at the end to kind of have a moderator, and you can type in your questions, if I have questions at the end. So you can still interact. It's not, silent and you just have to take it in. But you don't want a million people trying to talk when the CEO is talking, right?
Right. And so I think a big point to this, because of the Blue Jeans example and their propaganda, is a company is not going to buy Visual Huddle because of our ability to do these large scale events, right? What's going to happen is we're going to have customers that are using us for the traditional services that we provide, and they're going to have a need periodically or one-off to do this large event. When we can say, hey, we can handle that for you, this is how, you guys will get in the right resources, we'll have the Dexio involved, and we'll get the right people together so that we can put everything together for them to understand how it works. So really all you need to know about all that is that everything you saw in that video, we can do the exact same thing.
Yeah.
They base their entire campaign off that one giant event.
It's one of those things where, again, and they're in the same space we are. That's not what they do. There are companies out there that's all they do are large events. And there's just so many things that go into it. It's if you're only going to do one or periodically or whatever, we can do it just as well. But I think that I don't need to come up with an analogy. It's a good, nice to have. It's a good thing to be able to provide. But I would say the core services are everything we've talked about. So let's see, we've covered a lot of these points when we were talking about Zoom. So I think we have a pretty good understanding of.
So I want to hear Grayson and Ruben to go through these talking points and why these are bullet points up there.
Love it. So they don't offer unlimited audio. You have to pay
Correct.
to go like Zoom as well.
Correct.
Okay.
So that's a hidden cost, right? So that's one good one. That's good.
Then obviously the security and encryption is important. AES 1
128 as opposed to the strawberry, vanilla, chocolate analogies. So
Uh-huh.
yeah, that's a huge selling point as well, especially
Okay.
if you already have hardware like already installed. So that's important too. I do have
And
a
that
question
also
about
goes through the ports. So that would go under the port, the 443, the security and
443,
encryption. That's huge, 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 huge.
as far as the subscriptions, how I haven't seen that bullet point before. So how are we
Good point. Yep. So Zoom, this is not a differentiator with Zoom. This is only when you're talking about Blue Jeans. So the EULs that we sell, the client bundled with the virtual meeting room, for Blue Jeans, they have a similar bundle, and it has to be a minimum of 10. So you have to sell a pack of 10 licenses, right? Whereas we recently made the change a couple months ago that you guys can sell a single EUL. So it's a way to get into customers small, right? And then expand, land and expand.
So they have a 10 minimum. So
And global coverage, are they just based in the United States or North America? So there's only 4
it's in the UK and Australia too. Okay, that's it.
They definitely are focused in the U.S., more West Coast, right? If you've ever been on a Blue Jeans call in the U.S., it's okay. It's not horrible. But if you've been on a call in the U.K. or something like that, I mean, it is a distraction. The quality is so bad because all the data is going through that POP in San Jose. So if you're calling from Australia, you have to take the public internet all the way to San Jose and then all the way back. So it's a nightmare. But the coverage bullet point is more just about the POPs. So they have that one POP in San Jose where we have 19 all over, right? Smart roaming, everything that goes around with that.
What about, when we talk about the My Meeting video soft client? The advantages
Sure.
of having that.
So I'll let you go.
Me?
Grayson, what do you
our
what's-
advantages.
Yeah. So when we talk about how do we win, because the point with this My Meeting video soft client. So this is how way we win.
This is
over
our
Blue Jeans.
inoperability. I don't know. I don't know exactly. Maybe I do. I don't know how to phrase it.
It's kind of a generic bullet point, right? But basically, so the My Meeting soft client, first of all, that's a brandable client that you guys are able to sell. So your brand, right, is going to be in every one of your end users. Blue Jeans doesn't have a client. So they can't video enable their PC or their tablet or smartphone to make point-to-point calls.
So they can't use anything other than their desktop, is what you're saying?
The browser.
Or the browser? Okay. Okay.
And you can't make a point-to-point call. So what Patty was talking about before, if you want to talk to somebody using Blue Jeans, you have to schedule it, coordinate it, or give them the URL, and they call in, they meet you.
Okay,
So
you can't
there's
just
like
run them like
exactly. So there's a 2 or 3 step process to have
Right.
that call, video call.
And
Whereas
exactly. And the main thing to remember is Blue Jeans is a bridging service. It's only for VMRs, right? Where you guys have the extra capability of the point-to-point calling. So, number one, point-to-point calling is huge differentiator. Number two, call control infrastructure is not needed. So, $50,000 to $200,000 of infrastructure. We're not talking about man hours. We're not talking about the servers. We're not talking about all that other stuff that goes along with that. Is not needed with Visual Huddle.
And the soft client just gives you the flexibility to join from any device, essentially. Okay.
And the soft client, I think Patty talked about this too, the ability to kind of pair all of your devices together. So when Ruben's traveling, right, I don't have to know where he is, what office is he in, what conference room is he in. I'm just going to call his email address and it will ring all of his devices through this soft client, which Blue Jeans does not have, nor does Zoom.
Zooms does not have soft client either.
Nope.
So they were accessing to their phone.
Yeah, so when
Through the browser.
Correct, exactly.
Okay, okay,
Yeah.
okay, that's what you're saying. Okay.
So
I
when
thought
Or
you
they
were
would
talking
about-
call in, or they could call in through their endpoint, but then they're going to be charged for that as well.
I was just making sure you were
Yeah,
saying
so-
you couldn't use it on your tablet, only that.
Yeah, yeah. So I think, no, this is an important point. It's an important point to understand because the soft client provides a lot of advantages. One of which is just more control. So it's either joining from the soft client or the browser.
Mhm.
When you join through the browser, WebRTC, then you are, so as a service provider, there's very little that we can control, right? So when we have somebody download the soft client and utilize the soft client for joining, you're still going over, a data connection.
Mhm.
That part's not different, but we have a lot more control over the experience because they're coming in through a client that we developed.
I see what you're saying.
So things like the ability to record, things like the ability to manage your meetings, see who's on, all those things that we provide, the information we provide as part of the soft client. Those are things that you lose if you come in through the browser only. Colin, Warren, anything else as far as just what I would say the advantage of the soft client versus just coming in over a browser?
Just the tunneling, the ability to tunnel again behind your firewall, right? Everything is safe and secure. Nothing's registered to the public internet. Outside, you don't have hack attempts, stuff like that.
I mean, the only big difference for me in general has just been the quality. The experience is usually better coming over the soft client than the browser as well.
For sure. And you can control the quality too.
Mhm.
I'm in a lower bandwidth area. I'm going to set my settings to low and kind of have a little bit more control on that side.
All right, so now we'll go back to the grid with the some of the differences. And again, you're going to have this information, so I'm not going to go do a deep dive in here, but I think it gives you an idea of some of the differences in pricing and what's provided. In a lot of ways, it is apples and oranges. If you're making, to me, I think the biggest thing is if you're making a decision, it's difficult to make a decision based solely on price because you get different things with what you pay for. I think if anything, that begs the discussion of quality. What are the other things that should be factored into your decision? And I guess where I'm going is it's hard to say that one's cheaper than the other. It depends on what you're doing and how much you're using it. How many licenses? It depends on a lot of
What do
things.
you want to use it for?
Yeah. And how many, with both Zoom and BlueJeans, we talked about endpoints paying as you go. So it depends a lot on how many times you're going to be using the endpoint. So it's apples and oranges. You can't really look at a grid and just say, okay, this one's cheaper. It completely depends on
Especially
usage.
when you have to pay for audio
Exactly.
recording
Exactly.
and all that as well. Yeah.
Exactly. There's a lot of factors that go into overall cost in addition to just the licenses. We have simplified it by saying, hey, $59 a month, it's all you can eat. It's a buffet. You get as much audio as you want to use, as much video. If you have an endpoint subscription, as much endpoint usage as you want to use. So all of those things are factored into that flat fee per month. That could be a significant advantage because then you're not getting hit with unknown fees, unknown charges. So, when you look just at the top line, $20 a month for Zoom, $59 a month for Videxio, again, that's a very, it's apples and oranges. It truly is because that $20 a month with Zoom is not really the cost. You're going to incur more cost based on what you're doing and how much you're using it.
And you have to pay extra for that endpoint.
Right.
Mhm.
So the big, again, what I said a few minutes ago that I think is really important is that because pricing is apples and oranges, you have to have the conversation about usage. You have to have the conversation to be able to help the customer understand a true apples to apples cost comparison. Once you have that, that's going to introduce other factors that should go into the decision where we do have that competitive advantage. You can talk about the HOV lane. You can talk about the ability to incorporate the endpoints. You get into, and all of those things become much more significant value adds. The biggest reason is because you're getting an understanding of how the customer intends to use it, and you can help consult with what's better for them. So the fact that you saw a Zoom commercial and a Blue Jeans commercial, we of course had to show you.
Oh God. The worst video ever.
Oh, I love this.
Oh my God.
I just noticed the fragile, bloody, expensive. I like it. I
So
like it.
Norwegian.
It's good. It's good. So I thought it was important to do the deep dive into Blue Jeans and Zoom. Any questions you guys have about how we stack up against either of those? Why we win, how we win?
And like you said, it's going to come down to usage and what they want to use it for, and then you kind of move on from that, continue to have a conversation. But from a general standpoint, I think
Good. Grayson?
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. So we'll shift gears to talk about Spark, Cisco Spark. So I think it's important to understand that Cisco Spark, although they came out, so there's a couple things. Beginning of the year timeframe, winter timeframe, a couple months ago, 6-9 months ago, Cisco Spark came out with a big press release talking about how they were going to be giving away for free the ability to do video over Spark. What they didn't mention was that in order to use the free version of Spark for free, you had to have a premium version of WebEx or other Cisco products. So basically, the delta that you had to pay in order to get Spark for free, or video for free, it wasn't free. So, and Cisco's really good at that. I mean, they're the $500 billion company. We talked about them yesterday. Ruben did a great job of just some overview on Cisco and Cisco Spark. But I think the reason that we look at them as competition is because they are so big. But when you look at whether it's Spark or WebEx, when you look at Cisco's ability to do just video, it's important to understand how it's very different than what we do as a video service provider. And I'll classify Blue Jeans and Zoom in the same category as that video service provider. Cisco is trying to be the jack of all trades, and they are the master of none. So when you look at Spark specifically, Spark was introduced as a team meeting space where you can chat, share files, and I put work on items asynchronously, meaning that when you send an IM, an instant message, you send that message and then the person responds when they're able to, right? So it's not real-time communication. It's not a telephone call or a video call. So that's what we mean by asynchronous. Synchronous is real-time communication. Asynchronous means that it's like email, IM. It's a form of communication that is not real time. It may happen very quickly but that's dependent upon the other person's availability. So when you send an email message or you send an IM to somebody, the expectation is that you'll get a response at some point. You don't feel dependent upon the technology to be able to deliver that message back to you quickly, right? It's a matter of the person's availability to give you that information back quickly. So this whole notion of asynchronous communication, when you look at social media has been driving it for sure, because all of that is, you're posting messages and people reply when available or if they want to. So when you look at a team group chat space, that is much the same. And where we're seeing this really get a lot of usage and visibility is just with projects, right? So if you're working on projects, you don't have to, you've got multiple people with, you divvied up responsibilities, and now multiple people can work on, at the same site, and you can share information back and forth. You can post files. So you can, even as a project manager, you can view and see how the project is progressing based on everyone's individual responsibilities. So it's starting to gain significant amount of traction in businesses because of the flexibility, but also because it's, in many cases, it's being positioned as an alternative to email. Because the way that most projects were managed in the past was you'd have a spreadsheet, you do a weekly call or bi-weekly call, daily call, whatever, and everybody would track their progress on that spreadsheet in real time. And it was deemed that, hey, we're doing these calls so often that we'd be a lot more productive if instead of doing update calls, we were actually working on the project. So Cisco obviously saw that this was a pretty hot part of the communication space in general. And so that was, I think, the more significant part of Spark, is the ability to bring this work on a project or a workspace where you had the ability to invite people and have people manage whatever they needed to all in a central space. So where I get a lot of common advantages is if I need to go find a document, I think about that document in the context of how it was shared, presented, or discussed. So I can go back to that meeting room or that project or that topic and be able to go get that document. As opposed to doing a massive search over email. I can't remember exactly who it was that sent it. It was somebody on that project team. I can't really search for a team, so I've got to search for individuals, or I've got to search for what I think the name of the document was. Or, in other words, it can be much more cumbersome to go back and try to find something, where when you've got the workspace, it can be much more easier, or much easier, because everything is contextual. It's about you're working on a project, you're working on a theme, you're working on a topic. So this whole notion of pervasive group chat is gaining significant traction. So Spark built this, or Cisco built this with Spark, and it incorporates the ability to message, which is everything we've just discussed. But then in this site, you can click a button to meet, like a WebEx, or make a call, video call, or an audio call. So some cool features built into your site. Here is a quick clip of Spark. Just shoot up the volume. Yeah, sorry, this thing isn't going anywhere.
Yeah.
So this is Cisco's, they're putting everything into Spark when it comes to communication. When I say communication, I mean, they're transforming collaboration, and their vision of collaboration is now Spark. So it's important to understand this because it is, I'll call it an indirect competitor to what we do because it provides video and because Cisco's so massive. So it's very important, you know, like you picked Cisco yesterday. So why'd you pick Cisco yesterday?
Because they're massive.
There you go. All right.
Everybody knows video.
And Spark is their newest
Maybe.
endeavor. Yeah, exactly. So they're pushing it hard. And so we're going to come up against it. They're pushing it as, again, this all-encompassing tool. So what I wanted to be careful of, and the reason that we incorporated this information we're going to go over now with Slack, is I wanted to make sure that you had ample ammunition when you come up against the person who says, well, why would I want to go with you for video when I can get so much more when I use Spark? So this is how we can reply to that. So Slack was on the scene first, and it was you can do your own research on Slack. It was the fastest adopted app, or the usage with Slack exploded over the last probably, especially 12 months. And Slack is nothing but a team space. The thing that makes Slack so unique is that there are tons of integrations built into it. And you can, it's kind of like how iPhone, you go to the App Store and you can get whatever apps you want. Somewhat similar with Slack, you've got a team meeting space, but you can personalize it or add all kinds of components to it. So here's a quick YouTube on Slack.
So they're just user collaboration. Okay.
Slack has a free version, which is probably why the adoption was so explosive. And we started using the free version, just Colin and Patty and Lauren and I, a couple of weeks ago, just in preparing all the information for training. And so we'll do the same thing. We'll build out, we've got a site, so we'll build out another channel that we'll use just for ongoing communication. But the reason I think it's important is because this is obviously, if Cisco is giving this type of communication so much attention, I want to make sure that we're embracing it. I want to make sure that we are using it so that we can understand the advantages on our own, because all that's going to do is help us communicate. As Cisco Spark continues to gain traction, we will have an understanding of why customers are using this form of communication, the benefits of it, and we'll be able to stay one step ahead of our customers and our competition. The fact that there's a free version of Slack and we have the price points that we do offer a significant competitive advantage to somebody who's looking at Spark and its overall capabilities. So Lauren put together, when we look at just the video component of Spark, this is how we stack up. But again, I thought it was important that you had an understanding of the overall product offering and how you combine Slack and Visual Huddle, and now you've got something to go to war with Cisco Spark.
Okay. You have more endpoint flexibility.
I think one of the more significant pieces is Cisco is making it proprietary only, meaning that you have to, it will only work and communicate with other Cisco devices.
Correct. So you lose all interoperability with Spark. No Skype, no Polycom, no nothing.
Which,
again, ask the questions. How are you going to be using video? Are you going to be talking to people outside of your network? Do you need guest licenses? If they are, then this will not work.
it also, so becoming a user of Slack will arm you with having conversations with customers about how they're going to use Spark. And that's what's key. Is because when you have those conversations, then you can use some of this information here on the screen to be able to position our offering to be better. So we've probably gone into it more than I really wanted to. I wanted to introduce it and give you a little bit of a notion of it. I think that once we set up the space, and I'll do it today, get you guys on with it. I think once you start using it, you'll kind of understand it. It starts to take on a life of its own and the ability to communicate. There's apps and everything, so you have the ability to, you can kind of live in Slack, meaning that a lot of people live in email. They have their email up all the time so that when messages come in or calendar invites come in, or they just live in Outlook. I think Slack or Spark provides so much more functionality and communication ability that it's a better program or client to live in, because you get more information and communication, and it's all contextual instead of, searching by day or person or subject or whatever.
And I think on one of the first slides that I showed you guys of how the kind of evolution, right, of Videxio, we started in video and we're trying to become more collaboration focused. I mean, we're definitely going down the Slack path. So that's why we're adding chat. So chat will live in the client, right? So you can live in that. We'll be adding document sharing within that same client. So that same, I can do everything in Visual Huddle. I don't need to go outside anywhere and use any other tools. So that is the end goal.
Yeah.
Lauren, do you know if the chat will be on the mobile platforms as well? So for tablets and smartphones, or just desktop specific right now?
It will be on tablet as well, yes. Anything
Okay.
that My Meeting Video can be on, it will be supported.
Okay.
That's big, very big. So you guys kind of see where things are going and how, we're going to be on the cutting edge, and most importantly, being able to have these conversations with customers about what's going on in the marketplace, where we're going, and most importantly, how we can help them. All right, so that is the competitive landscape. Let's see. Why don't I end this recording and we'll go into some tips and tricks and things that wanted kind of merge two different calls, which is fine.